Hi, it's Anna Haferman. Today we're going to make a slouchy beanie, and it is made from a this Barraco Ultra Alpaca, which is woolen alpaca. It's a number 4 yarn, but it's on the lighter side. We're going to make it on the LK150. It can be easily made on the Brother KX350. I just want to do one on the LK150. And these two machines are very similar, so what works for one pretty much works for the other. You may have to change the tension a little bit on the KX350, but not much. So what we need to make this project is, first of all, the LK150. And you will want to have your yarn parkers, whatever these are called, or 2 of these large weights that go with the, usually come with ribbers on different knitting machines. If you have those, it makes it a lot easier to park your yarn. We need our yarn, which, as I've said, is the Barraco Ultra Alpaca, and this is available at lots of local yarn stores and online. I'll put a link where you can order it, and you can use any number 4 yarn that's on the thinner side, or even a thicker number 3. Then you will want waste yarn. Now, your waste yarn should be something that is cheap, first of all, and flows through the machine easily, and is of a similar weight to your yarn. It doesn't have to be exact, but a similar weight will be good, or, you know, it can be a little lighter, a little thicker. It needs to contrast in color very well. You don't want anything fuzzy, but you want a contrast in color, because we're going to be taking this project on and off the machine multiple times so that we can turn the knitting, and that's how we're going to make we're going to knit, then we're going to take it off on waste yarn, turn it so that we now have and then we'll knit, take it off on waste yarn, turn it again, and that's how we're going to do it. And it sounds like a lot of work, and it's definitely more work than the first basic hat we made, but you'll find that this process goes very fast if you're set up. It's actually quite easy, and I've made several of these hats now practicing, and they really don't take too long. To set ourselves up for success, we will want to have the following tools ready and available. First of all, a pair of scissors. Any kind will do, but even little clips, just something you're going to be clipping the waste yarn a lot. You'll need your 1-1 tool just for the cast on. Then you'll want your 1-3 transfer tool, and that's going to be for rehanging stitches. Then we'll want either a darning needle, or this is a double-eyed transfer tool, and either one. And we won't need that till the end. And then also the clips, the clamps, clips. I use these little electrical clips, and I like them because they have a nice amount of weight. They're fairly small, and they're easy to clip onto your wherever. They clip on nicely, and because they have rubber tips, they hang onto the yarn really easily. So I like to use those. I'll put a link as to where you could order those. Then we need a couple of claw weights, which came with your machine, and the cast-on combs, and we only need 2 of them to cast on, and then we're only going to use 1 for the main project. So first thing we'll do is thread up the yarn. So I've got my yarn threaded. I've got the waste yarn threaded on the left and the regular yarn on the right. I'm going to set my carriage to tension 5.5, and my carriage is just set on normal throughout. So I've got the back 2 levers back and the front 2 levers forward, and that'll be the same on either the LK150 or the KX350. So the first thing I'm going to do is with the waste yarn, I'm going to cast on. I'm going to go from 39 to 39, so pull out needles 39 to 39 on the right. And then push every other one back. And this is the same on the KX350, just do the same number of needles. On the KX350, you might want to go down to tension 5. But you experiment. So I'll thread the carriage, take one of my clips, and put it on the end of the yarn. And then make sure my yarn's flowing well, and I'm going to knit I'm going to knit 1 row to cast on. Then I'm going to put together my 2 cast on combs. I only need 2 because it's not super long. Then I'm going to bring out the other needles from that I pushed back. Now remember, you pushed back number 39 before, so you make sure you're still on 39 to 39. And then knit a few rows of waste yarn. Once you get a couple rows, put some weights. Actually, it probably would have helped if I had weighted the cast on comb down, which I forgot. So do an even number of rows and end on the right. Now we're going to take the scissors and cut the yarn, and make sure to park it back on the mat. Then take a clip to hold that down, because now we're going to start with a different yarn, and we want to leave a long tail to sew up the hat. So I'm going to make a little thing so that I'll have enough. I'm going to clip that just because we're going to be turning this so much that this is going to start tangling up. So I'm going to just clip it down like that and put it in the carriage. And now we're going to knit 20 rows for the hem. So just start . We have 20 rows. Now we're hanging the hem. The first thing we need to do is take the weights off. including the cast-on comb. Set that aside. And we did this on the first hat we made. What we'll do is take the stitch bars here. We'll take the stitch bars and hang them up on the stitches. And we'll skip the first needle because what we're hanging is the bars between the first row of stitches, so we're going to be one less. And then hang each one on. Now, you can do this one at a time, but it goes much faster to do it 3 at a time. So now's the time to start to get comfortable with that. So we put 3 picking up 3 bars, putting them on the open stitches and hanging them. So you pick up 3, get them on the open needles. So now I'm switching. I'm going to weight this down and knit 2 more rows. So I want to put my claw weights, and it's actually best to get them under the waste yarn. So it's really weighting it down. The waste yarn's kind of not, it's not something that you need to weight down. And then I'll use one of these to kind of weight down the middle. This row, we're going to knit 2 rows now, and then we're going to turn the yarn. So we knit 20, we knit 2 more. Okay, so now we are at this point in our hat, but we're working from the back. So those were the 2 rows we just did. We hung the hem, and those are the 2 rows. Now I'm going to take the weights off, and then I want to mark the back of this hat so that I don't get confused as to what's the back and the front later on. And I think that all I'm going to do is take a piece of the waste yarn and just sort of thread it through somewhere on this hem so that I can remember that that's the back of the hat. You could mark this however you like. You could use a safety pin or a piece of tape or whatever, but I'm just going to use a piece of waste yarn. I was going to use a safety pin, and then I thought it might get caught on something, so you can try it. I'm just going to make a little knot there so that I'll remember. So it'll be easy for me. So there, I've just marked the back. That's that. Now I am going to park the yarn, because what I'm going to do is knit this off on waste yarn so that I can turn the entire work and rehang it. So now I'm unthreading the carriage, so I'm pulling the yarn out, making sure it's clear of everything underneath. There's a brush there that it tends to get caught on. And then if you're using these things, park it like that. What I'm actually going to use are my ribber weights, and put it right there and just park it like that, making sure it's clear of everything under there. That way it's a lot easier for me to get in and out. If you don't have these or these, you can park it back there and it's fine, but I like to use these. So then, and we're going to be taking the yarn in and out of the carriage a lot, and that's why I like to use these, because it just makes it go faster. Now, we're going to take this off on waste yarn, and I'm going to take my waste yarn, thread it into the carriage, Making sure to put a clip on the end. And I realize now that I took my weights off too soon, so I'm going to put them back on, because it'll go much better with weight. Now I'm going to do 8 rows of waste yarn. And I'm going to reset my carriage. So I'm going to do 8 rows of waste yarn, and it's important to do an even number, and you'll see why, but normally it doesn't matter how many rows you do of waste yarn, as long as it's more than 6. But I'm going to do 8, and I want to make sure that I want my carriage to end up over here when I'm done. So I'm doing an even number. Okay, so now I've done 8, and I'm going to cut the yarn. Secure it on the yarn mast so it's ready for the next time I need it. I'm going to then I'm going to take the weights off. And now the carriage is empty, and I want to take this off so that I can rehang this on the machine. So the carriage is empty, so I just go across and the knitting falls off. Now I'm going to unpark my yarn from the side of the machine. Then I'm going to take the yarn and the free yarn that I have, I'm going to thread into the carriage. And that way I will be ready for my next maneuver. So now, what I want to hang, I want to have the knit side facing me, and here was the back that we marked. I want the front facing me. And then I want to hang these bars onto the knitting. Now this time we're hanging 1 bar on every needle, because these are actual stitches and not actually just the bars between. So the same number of needles that I had, which was 39 to 39, I need to get a stitch on each one. I want to pick up these blue bars and hang them onto the machine. So I want to make sure that I get each one, because if I don't, that will be a dropped stitch. So I want to make sure that I get one per stitch. So we started with 39 to 39, which is 78 needles. We're going to keep that number of needles till the very end. So you're picking up the blue bars, each one at a time, or 3 at a time. And hanging them on the needles. Picking them up 3 at a time goes so much faster than 1 at a time. But if you're not ready to do 3, just do 1. But you should, it's not too hard. You go 1, 2, 3, and then you stick them on the needles and drop them off. Then, so you make sure, somehow that one didn't get on there. And make sure you've got a stitch on every needle. Okay, now our yarn is threaded, our main yarn. We want to make sure our tension is nice, so you may have to pull it down a little. It tends to get a little bit out of whack after you turn it. Weigh down your knitting. And now what we're doing is we've turned the work. So what we've got is this part is there, and now we're ready to do these 12 rows. So just make sure your yarn is flowing freely. And we're going to go 12 rows. Now we've done 12 rows, and we should end up at row count 21 because we did 8 rows of waste yarn. We took the carriage across empty to free the knitting, and then we did 12 rows. So we did 12 rows. We ended up on this side now. So now we're going to park the yarn on the other side. And I'm doing it, I don't know if I have you on camera here. I'm doing it the same way on this side with one of the river weights. And then I'm going to take the waste yarn and thread the carriage, put a clip on the tail of it. I'm going to use one that I used before that I don't need anymore. And then I'm going to do 8 rows of waste yarn again. And then I'll clip my cut my waste yarn again, park the yarn in the mast, and then I'm going to take the weights off. I'm going to be turning the yarn again, just like we did before. So here's where we are. This is the bottom. The waste yarn is going to come off. Then this is the first row of purl stitches. Now I'm going to take those off, turn it around again, just like we did, but the other way. So I'm taking the carriage across empty, which will free the yarn, free the knitting. Then I'm going to unpark the yarn from that side and put it in the carriage again, then hang these stitches. And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to keep turning every 12 rows just like that until we get to the top. Through it one more time. So here's the back again. Now we're hanging these blue bars again. So now I'm getting ready to do my next row of 12, my next 12 rows. I've got the knitting hung again. Here's where I'm at. This is the back. You can see there's the 2 rows of purl there. And then I've got my the last 12 rows I did, and now I'm going to be doing these 12 rows. So I've got my weights on. I had my main yarn threaded, and I'm going to do 12 rows. So now I've done the 12 rows, and I want you to notice a couple of things. Now my carriage ends up on the right side, and my row counter is at 42. Remember, the first was 21 when we reset it. So then I had the 8 rows of waste yarn, then the 1 row when the carriage came across empty, plus 12 is 21 each time. So that's a way to keep track of it. I'm going to start it all again. So what I'm going to park the yarn, then I'm going to thread the waste yarn, do 8 rows, cut the waste yarn, go across with an empty carriage, turn the knitting, hang it again, and do 12 more rows. So I've taken the waste yarn off, I've turned the yarn again, and I wanted to mention that whenever you're hanging the yarn, to make sure you're doing it correctly, make sure that the part that you're hanging is knit stitches, so that you don't try to hang it with the purls facing you, which is really just what you took off. It can be easy to get confused, but your waste yarn should be curling down at the top like that. These top stitches should be knit stitches, and then you just start hanging. So I have, at the point where I've hung my stitches for the last time, here I'm at the back. I've got the inside facing me, so here's my little yarn mark. And then facing me there are 1, 2, 3 rows of purl bumps, and then my row counter is currently reading 156, and so this is my last group of stitches. This time, instead of 12, and this is what is going to be this part here, this time instead of 12 stitches, 12 rows, I'm only going to do 10. Then I'm going to transfer to sew off the top of the hat. So I'm only doing 10 rows rather than 12. And so I will hang my weights again. And making sure my yarn is in the right spot, free flowing. I'm going to knit 10 more rows. And now I'm going to transfer. What I'm going to do is transfer the stitches, so that I'm going to take my first stitch, transfer it to the second needle, and then the third stitch, and transfer that back also to the second needle. And then I'm going to do that all the way across, so I have 3 stitches on each needle and then 2 out of work in between. So I've got all my needles with 3 on each stitch. I've got the in-between needles all the way back, and then I want to make sure that I pull out the ones with 3 stitches so that the carriage, so I can knit them off easily with the carriage. So I'm going to rehang my weights and bring my carriage across slowly. Because I want them all to knit off. Then I'm going to take my yarn and free it from the carriage and cut a piece that's about a little more than twice the length, because I'm going to be sewing the stitches off from this side, because that way when I gather the top of the hat, it'll pull in on itself and it'll make a nice closure. I'll just cut the yarn and thread it in a darning needle or my double-eye tool and sew them off. So to sew the stitches off, I'm going to take the weights off. It'll be easier that way. And remember, my yarn ends on the left over here, so I'm going from the right, and I'm just going into each stitch and sewing it off onto the yarn. All the way across. So I've sewed all my stitches off, and now all I have to do is take the knitting off, and then all that remains is removing the waste yarn and finishing the project. So I'll just do it like this. And here's my hat. I will remove the waste yarn, sew up the side, and cinch up the top. And that'll be that. Here's what it looks like when we take it off the machine. We've got a bunch of tails of waste yarn over here, and here's all your waste yarn. So now we're going to start removing this. So what you do, look for the side that the tails are on, and they're all on the same side. So you go to the other side, and you get, there's one stitch right here that we'll just cut. Make sure you cut only pink and no blue. The blue is what we're keeping. We're just going to cut the pink, and we're going to go to the other side of that and pull on the tail that on top, which was that yarn, and just pull it out. Pull that one row of yarn out, and then that'll come right off. So we just keep doing that. This is your marker of the inside of the hat, so just leave that there for now. And then here was our, this was the original tail that we started with, that we clipped, and I'm just going to clip it on here so it stays out of the way. Now I'm going to, here's the tail on one side. On the other side, I'm going to go over here and clip this piece of waste yarn, making sure not to cut any of the blue yarn. Just make a little clip, comes loose, come over here, grab the tail and pull. And it'll get a little tight, but you can you just pull it out, and that will come right off. And just, so now just keep taking off your waste yarn, and we'll get those two, and then there's the ones on the other side. We're going to get all of those off, and once I do that, I'll come back. I've got all the yarn off this side, and now I'm going to go to this side and get everything off of here. This is our hat, and now, but we're going to have to gather the top and sew down the side. So here's the inside, and I'm gonna keep this on here so I don't until the very end, and then I'm just gonna get rid of it. But the first thing I would do is, here's our top, and these are the 3 stitches we knit together, we transferred together, and then we this will pull, but this will pull, it'll cinch in, but it's going around itself. So I'm just gonna start it and get rid of some of the slack. But I don't want to do it all the way because I want to sew it up first. So I'm gonna, to sew it up, I'm going to thread the needle this is from the top of my hat, and at this point you can cut it off a little shorter because it'll get in your way. You won't need that anymore. You don't want to cinch the whole thing in right away because it's easier to sew it up if it's relatively flat. Then I'm going to thread a needle and mattress stitch. That's the inside. So the inside is there. I can see my pink thread is right there. So I'm going to go start here. These are going to go together like that. I'm going to go in the insides of these. Then these fit together, and then go outside and come from the outside mattress stitching, matching up the knits and purls. So I've mattress stitched the sides of my hat, and I'm going to take the yarn that I mattress stitched up with and put it to the inside of the hat. And if we forget where the inside, there's our little pink piece of yarn. I'm just going to leave that in the middle. Then I'm going to take, that was the piece I just put in there. Now I'm going to find the tail, my gathering tail, which is in there as well, but okay, so there that is. And then I'm going to pull so that the whole at the top of the hat closes up. You can pull that so it goes to the other way. And so you should have something that looks like that. Pull it as snug as you can without, you know, you don't want to yank on the thread so hard that it breaks, but you want it to close up. So there's our little kind of flowery top. And I'm going to rethread that and sew up the top. And just by going in and out here of the little hole on the top, and just do it till it's secure, and then push this through to the other side and tie these 2 pieces of yarn together. Now this one's pretty long, so I'm just going to cut them both and tie them together. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm just tying them in a knot, and then I'll weave those ends in. Then I'm going to get rid of this little marker that I made just by cutting it and pulling it out. Here's the hat unblocked and off the machine, and it kind of scrunches up like that, but when you pull it, it's quite long. So I probably won't block this, but you can certainly wash it and just, you know, lay it flat, but don't stretch it out and flatten it out too much. So here's what it looks like. And it's slouchy in the back if you wear it down like that, or you can kind of smush it up and keep it on your head. It fits slightly different on an actual human head than the plastic mannequin, because your hair sort of would keep it in place. I got this out of the one skein of the Barraco. I'm reasonably sure that if you use the same tension and on the LK150, you could get it out of one skein. If you like my videos, please subscribe, and thanks so much.